Roast beef has a lot more than roast beef, so check out their website, mavericksbeef.com, or check out their restaurant on Lexington in Roseville.
Take an ordinary putty knife and scrape off the old wax ring. Place the new wax ring over the flange, then line up the bolts with the bowl and gently set in place, making sure a proper seal is created with the flange and drain. Next.
Dad?
Yeah, sweetie.
Is that an old plumbing manual?
Oh, yeah, honey.
We really need to get some new books.
Right, do you want me to stop?
Nah, I kind of want to know how it ends.
Okay. Tighten the bolts, line up the flushing valve to the opening in the top of the bowl, and secure the tank with a screwdriver and crescent wrench.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Tonight, a chance of showers and storms with a low of 68, then Tuesday, sunshine with a high of 84. Cafe Latte is unlike any restaurant you've ever experienced. Grab a tray and pick from their award-winning selections of soups, salads, sandwiches, and mouth-watering desserts. Cafe Latte, Victoria Street and Grand Avenue in St. Paul, or cafelatte.com.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope everybody had a happy 4th of July weekend. I hope it was a lot of fun. I hope you all have all your digits still. I hope everybody was able to get some rest and relaxation. For myself, I mean, obviously on a long weekend like this, of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to grill. And I grilled and I really, really liked it. It's nice to do so. And here's the funny thing. I had a few people who wanted to talk to me about, paranormal related stuff. Where I'm part of a couple events coming up. People have been reaching out about some other stuff. And I literally said to some people, I'm like, I don't even want to hear the word paranormal for the weekend. We've been so busy the last couple months. I just like, you know what? Let me have a little bit of time to myself. And it was great to be able just to relax a little bit. It's not something that I feel like it's been able to do. It's weird because it's like I find myself sometimes not doing a whole lot of stuff, but yet you're not relaxing. Do you all ever run into that? Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm not necessarily doing anything of worth, but I'm not relaxing. We're weird, aren't we? Just humans are weird in general. This was an episode that we were going to do back in June, and some things came up, and I had to cancel very last minute on my guest. And she was very, she was very understanding, and that was something that I was very grateful for, because when I invite folks to come on the show, they're giving their time, they're giving their expertise. So just to kind of cancel last minute is not the way I like to operate. And my guest, she was fantastic and very kind about the whole thing. Jane Ammeson she's a columnist. She has contributed to a number of magazines, to a number of places: Long Weekend Magazine, Great Lake Boating, Ohio Magazine, Mex Connect. There's a lot of places that she's written for. She's a blogger, book reviewer, podcaster. She's an influencer. One of my favorites, road tripper. There is something really fun about that. And it's there's a lot that she's doing. She got my interest because she has written a book called Hauntings of the Underground Railroad, Ghosts of the Midwest. And of course, that's speaking my language. And I was really excited that she agreed to be on the program. Even more excited that she agreed to be on the program after I canceled on her at the last moment, and that she didn't skip a beat and came back. And Jane, welcome to GhostBox Radio.
Thank you, Greg, and thanks for having me. And don't worry, we all have emergencies in our life, and it worked out just fine. And I was happy to come back or be back because I love talking about ghosts.
I find it very interesting. Now, going back to what you had sent me about a little something about Jane here. You've published a lot of books, and I'm looking through them. They all sound great, but am I correct here by thinking that you've only done one paranormal book, though, right?
That is true. And, I was looking at all the excellent people you've had on your show and their book titles, and I'm thinking, man, I need to find some more another haunted category to write about, because it is fun. A little scary. You get to meet a lot of interesting people, and you also learn of history. I mean, haunted tales have so much to them besides just being maybe sometimes scary or eerie.
Very much so. Now, I'm gonna ask you to, let's go back as fundamental as possible. I mean, the question I'm going to ask you, if people don't know what this is the time to learn it, because this is a huge part of our history. What was the Underground Railroad? Okay,
the Underground Railroad played an important part before the Civil War. It was a way of people who were captives and were forced into slavery. We call them enslaved people. We call them freedom seekers. And there were a bunch of committed people in the United States who helped form an underground railroad. So the slaves could, when they were escaping, have safe houses, or what they called stations. And there was a conductor of the Underground Railroad, and they would help them go place to place until they could get someplace where they would be free and couldn't be sent back into slavery. One of the prime places a lot of people went to, the slaves went to, the enslaved people, was to Canada, because Canada didn't believe in slavery. It was illegal there, but also it was illegal in Michigan. It was illegal in Indiana. It was illegal in Illinois and Ohio. And so my book, because it's the Midwest, focuses a lot on those areas and how the slaves came through, staying at different places. And as scary and horrible as escaping was, and because if they were found and returned, they would be beaten, they would be starved. Horrible things would happen to them. There were a lot of laws in place where if you were caught helping a slave escape, you could lose your property, you could go to jail. So for anybody involved in the Underground Railroad, there was a lot of peril in a lot of ways. Obviously escaping in the middle of the night with hounds after you, and men on horseback, slave seekers, was very dangerous. There were people who would cross frozen rivers with their babies trying to get to freedom. But also, if you got caught helping somebody like that, you could lose everything you had. So it took bravery on both people's parts. Right, a huge risk for just doing for people to do what they think is right. By trying to keep other people alive, basically. Right. Yeah. And help them have freedom. I mean, we all want to be free, don't we? Right. I mean, I hate to say it, I, for one, often feel like I take it for granted because it's been around me my whole life, And I think we do. I think we do. But can you imagine being forced to pick cotton in the hot sun from sunup to sundown? And, living in slave quarters, having somebody control your life. And it wasn't even you would earn money for yourself. You were helping them pick cotton so they could live in the big plantation houses. I mean, that's the darker side of Gone with the Wind, I guess you could say. Right, exactly. I mean, so much so. And that's what really got my attention about your book, because
I've known people to write and talk about, such things, but not in a book like what you had written. Where does the intersection of your interest combine between the Underground Railroad and spirits and paranormal? I mean, how did that kind of come together?
That's a great question, Greg. Because, I do a lot of travel writing, and, I would go to these places, and then I would hear a story about how at one time this place, let's say a bar in Indianapolis, the Otis Bar in Indianapolis, had been housed under, freedom seekers. And then I'd hear some stories about that and about how the place was haunted. Obviously, when I'm talking about the bar in Indianapolis, it's called the Slippery Noodle. It'd been a brothel at one time. It'd been a railroad hotel. It'd been a lot of different things. And of course, with that much history, I think it dates back to 1832 or something like that, or 1850. There are going to be deaths, brothels, people get in fights, get drunk, hurt each other. But they, the owner told me, and one of the other, the manager, both of whom had been there for quite some time. The owner's parents had bought the place back in the 40s, I think, about a ghost who lived in the basement. And they just accepted the ghost. He was there. He'd been part of the Underground Railroad, and he had opted to stay. I think his name was Harry. And, people would see him and they'd say hi. But if somebody didn't know he was down there and they ran into him, they might think he was another person. Or when they realized he was a ghost, they'd get spooked. Mm-hmm. And then I'm in a little town called Napoleon, Indiana, really little, but there's a restaurant there. And it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And I talked to some ghost seekers, and they said, yes, the basement's haunted, but it's, there's a ghost named Charlie who stayed behind to help with the Underground Railroad, to help other people on their journey. And I talked to the owners, and it was the same story. Oh, yeah, we know Charlie's down there. He's nice. He never hurts anybody. He's friendly. Spooks some people out, like beer distributors, if they go down there. And I thought, two completely different venues, far apart, and yet the same story, kind of, And to me, I don't know if I believe in ghosts or not. Do you, Greg?
Do I believe in ghosts? No, I don't. No, I do. Of course I do.
But anyway, when you hear these stories, you think, okay, these people have nothing in common. They don't know each other. And yet they both say they have ghosts in the basement, and the people who work there know the ghost. And the ghost was somebody from the Underground Railroad. And it just kind of perked my interest, because when you deal with the Underground Railroad, you had to be really secret about it, because if you got found out, you would lose everything. When you, in ghost stories, again, you can't really prove them. No. And I just thought that's a very interesting combination. Is that too long of a way to explain everything?
Not at all. No, it's it's very insightful too. And I think, and I think your question, or first of all, your statement of like, I'm not so sure if I believe in ghosts, and then you have two stories that are very similar to each other. I think that's a very, I think that's a very correct assumption, or a correct way of talking about it, because in my experience, going all around the country doing paranormal stuff, you do get a lot of the same type of stories, and right. you start to wonder, all these like named ghosts, oh, Charlie's down there, or we have Edward over here, and all this stuff, and I'm not here to tell people that some of these spirits don't exist, but those stories get so they get bigger and bigger as the years go by, that I mean, and maybe this isn't what you're trying to say, but this is how I feel about it. It's like, yeah, sometimes you got to be like, I'm going to take this with a little grain of salt, because it's great for business, or it's great for a story, but they're all sounding the same too. There isn't a whole lot different there.
Yes, and except that I took it. Yes, I understand what you mean, and it is great for business. There's a place in Indiana called Story, Indiana. It's a pre-Civil War village, and they have the Blue Lady, and there are a lot of people. You get the ghost explorers, the Ghostbuster kind of people, but you get just people, especially at Halloween time, that want to visit. So, the owner once told me, he goes, the more spirits my guests have, the more likely they are to see spirits, which I always thought was kind of cute. So you have the kind of, like you said, almost commercial side. But then again, sometimes when the stories are similar, but they're so separate, you think, maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. I personally don't want to ever see a ghost.
Yeah, you do. Stop it.
I do?
Yeah, okay. You do. Here's why. Because there's nothing to fear.
That's true. Very seldom did I hear scary stories. And maybe a ghost might push you or be kind of grumpy. But overall, they're more like people who wanted to communicate in some way or just hang out where they'd always hang out.
My take on it, do with it what you will, is that when a spirit wants to reach out to you, that's a very special situation because they don't do it to everybody. And so you get a spirit who wants to talk with you. And I will give you this. If you're not used to it, and even when you are used to it, it's still going to take you by surprise. I mean, because it's unusual, but there's something beautiful about it. That spirit communication. Yeah, I think so.
Wow. I'd love to hear. Well, I guess we're talking about me, but I'd love to hear some of your stories.
And I'll be honest, Jane, I've never had anyone ask me if I actually believe in ghosts. And, it's like I thought to myself, that is nice that someone actually asked me, because what if all these years, I've been doing the show for 10 years, what if it turned out that I don't believe in them and no one knew because no one asked? No.
Yeah. But in a way, you're a scientist. So whether you believe or not, you are collecting stories and disseminating information on these subjects. One other thing that struck me, and I heard this from the owner of the Slippery Noodle, when you tear down an old building that might be haunted or gets destroyed, the ghosts need to go somewhere, and they'll go to another place where there are that is old and maybe familiar with because of the surroundings and the age. And so sometimes ghosts don't have to be, how do I say it, spirits that had a connection to this building in the past, but they do now because they had no other place to go. I never thought about that. Homeless ghosts.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that gets spirits to move and find somewhere is certain people. If certain people are just like, sometimes people could be a beacon of like warmth to somebody, or to a spirit, because they just like their energy, and they'll come and hang out. And that's why sometimes people have like spirits in their house that they didn't understand, because spirits like their energy. They're kind of, like I said, like a beacon. So yeah, it's very interesting. I want to go to break here in a second, but Bridget had this interesting comment. I want your take on it. She says the strong connection between history, art, and the paranormal is so beautiful.
That is a great statement, isn't it?
Yeah, I find that to be very true, because I think, I was going to say history, is up to, it's in the mind's eye. That's not true at all. History is history, but art, it's up to what you find, what you like in art and whatever. It's up to your personal preference. Yeah. I think that statement goes a lot of different ways. I really like that. I like that a lot.
I really like that too. That's very profound. In fact, I'm going to write that down. So when we're on break, that is really great.
So, Bridget, look forward to seeing that in one of Jane's books coming up in the next year or so. Why don't we go ahead and do this? I want to get a break in. When we come back, let's continue our conversation. If anyone has any other questions for Jane in the comments, please let us know. We'd love to open it up. I have a lot to talk about, and specialized locations as well. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. Like you, I love good, fresh, delicious food. So I want to tell you about this treasure in Roseville called Maverick's Real Roast Beef. Maverick's has the best roast beef sandwiches I've ever had. Made fresh, every order. Add fries or onion rings dropped in the fryer when ordered, and you have a winning combination. Maverick's Real Roast Beef has a lot more than roast beef, so check out their website, mavericksbeef.com, or check out their restaurant on Lexington in Roseville. It's that time of year again where the weather is getting nice and it's time to get out of the house for some family fun. Lilliput is the perfect place and is open for the season. Be the first to take on their newest escape room, The Bunker. It's intense, exciting, and totally unforgettable. Prefer spooky? Try the Haunted Mansion. When you're done escaping, hit the mini golf course, go-karts, and jump pads. Lilliput is perfect for parties and group events too. Visit lilliput.net for hours and start your spring adventures at Lilliput. Now, too bad that Jane doesn't live up in the Twin Cities area, because I do want to let folks know we're talking about ghosts and stuff and spirits. This Thursday in Anoka, which is probably one of the most haunted places in the Twin Cities, on Main Street in an old building where Divine Lights is. I'm helping out with an event put on by Charvinity, which is a paranormal investigation of the basement to Divine Lights, to the building that Divine Lights is in. This is going to be pretty incredible. This is the first that we're doing of it. I'm very fortunate to have been asked to take part in it. Join us for a 3-hour guided exploration into a location rich with energy, mystery, and history. This is more than a ghost hunt. It's an invitation to explore the layers of energy that linger long after time has moved on. This is going to be a fantastic event. That's this Thursday. Now it's from 6 to 9, and you're wondering, well, how do I find out? How do I get involved? Go over to Charvinity on Facebook. That's CHARVINITY, Charvinity, and events. It's paranormal investigation. You can go there. There's a link to it to get tickets. This is going to be great, and you're not going to want to miss out on it. So we'll be talking about this week. Also want to let people know this week on Wednesday, I'll be giving out, there's going to be a live theater program about the podcast Hidden Brain. I'll be giving away tickets for that on Wednesday. You do not want to miss that. It's going to be great. We have a number of tickets that we're going to be giving away over the next couple of months. You want to make sure that you're a part of that as well. My guest tonight is author Jane Ammeson, and we are talking about her book, Hauntings of the Underground Railroad, Ghosts of the Midwest. I've had the opportunity to read the book. It is really, really good. You want to check that out. Also, I do want to do a shout out as well, that if you just want to see whatever else that Jane is up to, what she is doing, you want to go to janeammeson.com. That's JaneAmmeson.com. And find out. We'll talk a little bit more about all the other stuff she has going on as well. What do you think about that, Jane? Did I cover it all? I think
It does, and I appreciate it. And your events sound really great. It makes me want to drive up to the Twin Cities, especially that Thursday night thing. Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. Some great investigators are going to be there, and and I was talking about it with Shar, who's putting on the event, and we get so many people who are like, "Oh, I'd love to investigate with you. I'd love to be able to take part in stuff." And I get that life happens, but then when you put out events, it's amazing how you don't hear from anybody. You're like, here it is. This is what you wanted. Ta-da! And no, it's crazy. So folks, really show Shar and Divine Lights that this is something that you're interested in, and take part. Jane, can I tell a story real fast? I want to ask you a couple of questions. Did the Underground Railroad extend up to the Twin Cities?
That is a good question. Maybe they tried to make the passageway through the U.S. as short as possible. And so getting to the Great Lakes was predominantly the passageways that I knew about. I didn't run into any stories about the Twin Cities, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any. And you may have gotten people from other parts of the country, but I'm not familiar with Minnesota.
A reason why
you want to spend as little time. People were walking. I mean, that's how they did this. They were walking at night. You wanted to spend as little time in danger, getting to Canada or getting to freedom as you could. But Minnesota have been very welcoming to people who were escaping slavery because of you have kind-hearted people there.
We do. And the reason why I bring it up is a number of years ago, I went out with some friends for a private investigation. Someone needed help at a house just outside of St. Paul, and it was attached to a waterway that eventually led to the Mississippi River. And the house was probably built in the 1950s. But then you go down to the basement, and they found a fake wall that, when they took it down, it actually opened up to a whole other area in it that actually led to another area that led to a way out into into the outdoors over by that
water. Very
water.
Ingenious, isn't it?
It really was. And there are two things that this could have been. One would have been I was dating a psychic medium at the time, and she had visions of something that looked like people were shackled up, which doesn't really, I'm not quite sure if that really is the image of the Underground Railroad up in Minnesota, though. The other possibility we had was something to do with mobsters and prohibition, because St. Paul, especially over by the river, by the Mississippi River, back in the day was rife with mobs, and especially during Prohibition. So, but this location, I've never seen anything like it before. It was absolutely just an incredible location, and you just look at it from the street. It's a house. It's like a Rambler built in the 1950s. Oh. But the story it told was so.
That is amazing. That is very fascinating. And come to think of it, and I should revise what I said, because Minnesota and the Mississippi River was quite a passageway to freedom. So probably you had quite a bit of Underground Railroad activity. I'm just not familiar with it.
Right, absolutely. And for all we know, this had nothing to do with it. I mean, we don't know one way or the other, but it was such a unique location, and and you had some very cantankerous spirits there as well.
Hey, you get to explore some very fascinating places, don't you?
We do, yeah. That's why Bridget's comment about history, art, and the paranormal really come to mind. Like I'm sure you feel that way when we talked a little bit about the Hannah House before we came on the air. Yeah. I think about like Deadwood, and I remember like being on a stairwell in Deadwood, one of the old buildings, one of the old saloons, and being like, to me, this is art. You know, to some it might be just the Old West, to others it might be historic, but to me this is art. And here we are trying to reach out and see who we could talk to from there. The Hannah House in Indianapolis, or just outside of Indianapolis. You were there. Did you go there to research?
I did. I talked to the owner. In the story behind it is just fascinating, horrific, but fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful old mansion too. At the time I went there, a bed and breakfast as well. Very wonderfully restored. But I'd love to hear what you experienced there.
Well, we went there. I went there probably in 2015, I think. 2014 or 2015, and it might be 2014. And I remember the strongest thing that I remember about that, just from going into there, was there's a fort in St. Paul called Fort Snelling, and it smells old. It's a Civil War fort, and it still stands today. And you know that smell of old wood, and like the lacquer that they put on it and whatnot. And that was,
you call it a scent or aroma. It might sound better.
They might call it that. I don't know if I would. No, you're quite right.
I know what the smell is like. Yes. Right.
and so you know, that hit me right away. And we had a psychic medium there, Ursula Kalin, and we were doing it was more of an event than anything, but I came out there because I wanted to check it out. I mean, at that point I didn't know a whole lot of people in the Twin Cities area. So I guess to get my fix, I had to drive 12 hours to get it, which was fine. But I remember that we were doing some spirit communication, and some guy, actually, it feels like he almost was taken over, and he was speaking, but not in his own words. And I just remember looking at this guy, and it could be the light playing tricks on me or whatever else, but he didn't even look the same. You know, he just had a very different demeanor and look to him. And
spooky.
That part is spooky. That's not the kind of interactions we want. You know, we want the ones where, you know, spirits just like tell my, you know, grandkids I love them, not not some guy whose face is contorting in front of us.
Right. Yes.
So you know, and sometimes it happens. But once again, it could be the light as well. But I mean, I just remember that. Now, this was the place that the fire that happened there. I always get confused. Was it in the basement or was it at the top of the mansion?
I don't have the book in front of me, and it's been a while, but I thought it was in the basement. I thought they were hiding in the basement and the fire broke out, but I'm not positive.
At the end of the day, it's almost immaterial because slaves died. You know, people who are trying to get for freedom, they died. In horrifically, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously, you know, as people who are, you know, into the stuff, I'm into the paranormal stuff. It's you know, that's the stuff that we're like, oh, can we reach out? Can we, you know, can we help in some way as well? And you know, those are the questions, like, is that something that is, and forgive the terminology, what I'm going to say here, because it's the best way I can explain it. Is it burned into the fabric of the building? You know, and I mean that, like, you know, because sometimes when something is so shocking, it leaves, the belief is, the theory is, it leaves an imprint into the walls even. And so that stuff gets replayed over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I think you have a good point. I think there are, whether you believe in spirits or not, there are certain energies in a house where you feel warmth, or in others where probably that agony is somehow, like you said, permeated into the entire structure of the house.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Very
makes
much
a lot of sense. Yeah. You do a lot of thinking about this, don't you?
That's why I have no friends. It's just I just sit here and I just like think about it. Now the question is, you asked me before the show, did I feel anything there? The question is, did you feel anything there?
You know, I didn't. I wasn't there very long. I'm not an investigator. I don't have that paranormal training. I don't have the equipment. I mean, I have an app on my phone that supposedly tells me if there's, but I don't know how scientific that is, but the app on my phone really got a lot of, it showed that there was a lot of stuff going on there. But I also came away with the feeling that there was an immense history there that was weighty. I guess that is how you would say it. I mean, it's a beautiful place, but yes, I didn't sense anything, but I wasn't there at night, and I don't know if that's a difference, and I did not go downstairs in the basement.
It's funny that you mentioned the basement, because I was going to just talk about very briefly that the one thing I remember from being there was that we had set up a bunch of equipment in the basement, and at the end of the night, the one of the women that is an investigator that was responsible for the equipment, I don't know what happened, but she didn't want to go down there by herself. And so, and I don't know what it is, and that's not because of anything other than sometimes we all of us, any one of us who have done this long enough, we get spooked. It doesn't, I don't care if you've done it for 5 minutes or 30 years, there are going to be moments that something just spooks you out, and there is nothing wrong with that. And she asked me to go down with her to get the equipment, and we did. I didn't see any or feel anything down there, but this was my first time that I was around a bunch of psychic mediums, and it's a different sort of thing, and then just like that alone creates its own energy. So it's sometimes hard to know if you can pick up spirit or other psychic mediums, but it was really interesting.
And I think that, her not wanting to go down there, I think we've all had that experience of being somewhere where we know we think we shouldn't be afraid, but all of a sudden we're afraid. And that's probably one of our senses that, we don't even know we have, but that is trying to tell us something. And I wouldn't even know what to call it, intuitive maybe, but probably not. But just, maybe this isn't a good place for me to be.
I think it is intuitive. I do. I truly do. I think what that ultimately becomes is, we always tell people, how many times have you gone into something or done something and you're like, I should have listened to my gut instinct, know, and it's even like with rooms and stuff. And sometimes, I've going into paranormal situations and with investigators, and they'll stop at the threshold of a door and they're like, I can't go in.
Wow.
And what you do at that point is you just respect what they say.
Right.
Everyone's threshold is different in this. But it's really that's the cool thing about it, is that, it's about what all this is. One size does not fit all. So.
Right. And, you asked me in the last segment, you said, you probably do want to meet a ghost, Jane, or something like that. And I started thinking, I stayed in a house that was built in the 1850s. And the woman who had lived there, her name, which had several different names, but she'd been married at the time twice, and both of her husbands had died in that house. And she was tried for the murder of the second person. Okay. This is a house in Rockport, Indiana, high on the Ohio River, very beautiful. And some people have restored it. And I spent the night there, and I thought I would like, and then she was tried, she got off, she was not convicted. She did marry again, and that husband, they were married for 40 years. And so if she was a murderess, she didn't murder him. But I thought I would like to talk to her. And she supposedly is the one who haunts the house, though you think it would be the husbands that haunted the houses that she supposedly murdered. And I had a dog with me, and the dog didn't sense anything. So I don't know. Maybe all the restoration kind of pushed her away. I would like to talk to her. So I guess you're right. From an intellectual point of view, it'd be interesting to talk to a ghost.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I want to do this. Why don't we go ahead? Let's get our next break in. I got more questions for Jane. If anyone else has questions, please put them in the comments. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I hope you are too. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com. It's that time of year again where the weather is getting nice and it's time to get out of the house for some family fun. Lilliput is the perfect place and is open for the season. Be the first to take on their newest escape room, The Bunker. It's intense, exciting, and totally unforgettable. Prefer spooky? Try the Haunted Mansion. When you're done escaping, hit the mini golf course, go-karts, and jump pads. Lilliput is perfect for parties and group events too. Visit lilliput.net for hours and start your spring adventures at Lilliput.
Support comes from Hennepin Arts, presenting Hidden Brain Perceptions Tour with Shankar Vedantam. Are there parts of our minds that are hidden from us? This question launched the Hidden Brain podcast 10 years ago. Now host and creator Shankar Vedantam brings 7 key insights from the first decade of Hidden Brain to the stage. Whether you're new to the show or a longtime listener, this evening of science and storytelling will change how you think about yourself. Tickets available at hennepinarts.org.
This Wednesday on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, tune in for one-question readings with the highly acclaimed psychic medium, Refined Divine, who can answer questions about love, life, and connecting with past loved ones. Get a potentially life-changing reading by calling.
I can answer the question I've had all my life.
Delve into the exceptional talents of Refined Divine at refinedivine.com and experience her live Wednesday at 10 p.m. for psychic medium Refined Divine on GhostBox Radio. Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. And join us tomorrow on GhostBox Radio. We got a lot of stuff going on this week, and hopefully you'll be able to join us tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the connection between ghosts and UFOs. We've talked about this before, but we're taking a slightly different look at it with a special guest. Tune in tomorrow to see who that is. On Wednesday, we're doing live one-question readings with psychic medium, Refined Divine. Those are always great. If you haven't done so, check it out and call in or put a question in the comments, and Deb will answer it for you. Thursday, we're doing a replay from August of last year. We have author Tim Rayborn, and we're going to be talking about his book, Northern Mythology, Tales from North Finnish and Sami. And, of course, Friday, we end the week with Casual Friday as well. Lots of great stuff, but we're starting strong tonight. We have with us author Jane Ammeson, and we're talking about her book, Hauntings of the Underground Railroad, Ghosts of the Midwest. Jane, do you have a favorite story from the book?
Well, the one I just mentioned, it seems kind of unique to have a favorite murderess, but this Catherine Batchelor, I really liked her. I don't know whether she did murder these 2 husbands. Plus, both of the men she married before she married them had wives, and they died too. Coincidence? I don't know. And then the 3rd man she married, his wife died. Now, people died a lot back then, even when they were young, but that's a lot of markers in the cemetery, so to speak. So, and there have been ghost sightings in that house. One even dating back to 1920, where people were sitting on the porch shelling peas, and this woman walked up to them, and it would have been shortly after she died, and said, "This used to be my house." And, you know, when I say that, it kind of gives me the chills. So she's one of my favorites. But yeah, each story is unique and is stirring in its own way, I think. You know, the Civil War, you know, some of the people saying that, you know, were killed in battle and then maybe returned home. There's a cemetery in Indiana where, and I mentioned Indiana a lot, but I covered other states as well, where there is a uniformed Yankee soldier just walking the perimeter over and over again. And it's like he's trying to protect the people that are buried there. And those stories are very stirring to me as well.
It really is. And for me, the Civil War is one of my favorite times of history, as far as like just an interest. It's brutal, horrific. You know, you look at back and it's like, it's just so many lives lost. But I've run into so many paranormal experiences that are connected to the Civil War. Have you ever been out to any of the battlefields?
You know, I haven't. I have not. And I don't know if I'd want to go. I mean, I guess I should, but I just think it'd be overwhelming. And I understand they're very beautiful, but you just think of what all the men who died there, all the lives that ended, all the families that were destroyed because their husbands or fathers or their sons were never going to come back.
It is so true. Yeah, you're spot on. I think what's beautiful about it, a couple things, all the monuments that are around, that all the different infantries have put out over the years, and there's over 1,000 of them. I'll quickly tell you, when I was out at the battlefields, and we were out there about 3 a.m. one morning.
Ooh.
And it was just calm. And you know where like trees look like silhouettes because like lit behind almost somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And it rained. There's a hill. Because there's roadways now in the battlefields for cars to drive through and stuff. They're not paved. They're dirt. But there's a hill and this fog that looks like it's about knee high, not even knee high, ankle high. It starts kind of coming over the hill towards us. And then next thing you know, you're surrounded by fog. Like it went from ankle high to totally engulfing you.
Wow.
And you couldn't see more than 3 feet in front of you, maybe.
Did it bug you, or
it it just lingered. It just lingered.
Wow.
It's and it's like, well, maybe there's probably a billion different explanations from a scientific level that you could probably give it, but that came out of nowhere, and as quickly as it showed up, it dissipated.
Wow. I suppose there could be a million scientific explanations, but then there's some things that science really can't explain.
And that's where rightly or wrongly, I kind of personally fall. I'd much rather believe that it's, spirits or whatever else, rather than being told that, a meteorologist comes along and explains it to me. It just is kind of the way I go on that. Now,
yeah.
Have you?
Now, I mentioned this blue lady at Story, Indiana, the pre-Civil War village. I never experienced any ghosts there. I spent quite a bit of time there, but a friend of mine who worked there, she spent the night one night instead of going home, and she was, all of a sudden she was woken up. It was dark, and she just felt somebody sitting on the bed next to her. And so she quickly turned on the light, and there was nobody there. But she distinctly felt it. I mean, I suppose you could do all the scientific, but I mean, she had never talked about ghosts before, and she was sure that somebody sat on the bed next to her.
One of my one of the most haunted experiences I've ever experienced, lack of multiple words, I guess, is that I when I went out to Gettysburg, I thought I'd be very authentic, and I rented an Airbnb in the area, and this Airbnb went back to like 1851 or something like that. oh my gosh, they knew that I was Union. They knew I was from Minnesota. They knew. I mean, I've never, and I've been to a lot of haunted locations. I've never been anywhere so oppressed in my life. And I remember I saw like a wisp of smoke, like mist, walking in the kitchen at one point. But yeah, right. And this is the one thing that really did truly frighten me. Is I was doing like a Facebook, like FaceTiming my ex-girlfriend at the time, or she was my girlfriend at the time, and I'm just like FaceTiming her, and in front of me there's like something cast a shadow on the wall walking by, and it caught my attention, and I looked back down on her, and the look on her face was like someone who is horrified, and I said to her, what did you see? And she's like, nothing. I'm like, no, you saw something. What did you see? Nothing. And I'm like, come on. And she's like, there's somebody that walked behind you. Not something. Somebody walked behind you. Oh. And it cast a shadow. It cast a shadow on the wall.
The creeps. So, oh my gosh. So she was more sensitized that she could actually see.
She saw it. Yeah, she saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, and also to me, it says that it was strong. It materialized enough that it could be seen.
And it cast a shadow, right?
And it cast a shadow. And the odd thing about that is that I was there's bedroom upstairs in this place, and I couldn't stay up there. It was too strong. It was too strong of, we do not want you here. And I had to go sleep in the basement.
Okay, I'll leave. Yeah.
Right. I mean, exactly. And it was like, I'm helping out at an event over at this location that once was a headquarters for the Confederate, also a hospital. I mean, all these places are always either a hospital or headquarters. And
right. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm doing this all night. I don't want to have to go back and have this be hanging over me. But yeah, it was intense. It was really something.
Where did you end up sleeping? In your car, or?
I mean, funny enough. So apparently money was no object for me at that point. I had this place, and I was sleeping in the basement, and I was just like, yeah, this is fine, because I was able to get onto Hulu and watch some stuff, but it was not great. And this house ended up being just adjacent to this massive golf resort. And I just walked over there just to see if they had any rooms, and they did. So I actually was renting both simultaneously because, like I said, apparently money was no object for some reason. At that point.
Well, so, you wanted to get your sleep too. I would not have been able to sleep in that house after.
No, and I was having a lot of trouble. The book once again is called Hauntings of the Underground Railroad, Ghosts of the Midwest. Jane, with your website, can people get books from your website, or can they just go to Amazon? Or
Amazon. Any of the online purveyors, or you can even buy it through the publishers like Indiana University Press or Arcadia. But, Amazon or Barnes & Noble would be the place, because of the rates they offer on books.
Absolutely. So, and I also do on my site, GhostBox Radio, GhostBox Book Club. I have it there with an affiliated link. If folks get it through there, it helps the show off a little bit. As we probably have about a little less than 2 minutes left. Is there a place that you hadn't been able to get to that you would have liked to do with that book?
There were some private homes and that I would have liked to, where something happened, and yes, and I've never been able to get there. I was lucky to get into Catherine Batchelor's home because it is privately owned.
Sure.
But yes, there are. And they're just places that I've heard about from people since I've written the book that I would like to go to as well. And then something, I would like, and you probably and your listeners would probably have some ideas on this. Why are some places more haunted than others, even though some tragic things have happened in places, but nobody has ever reported ghosts? And I think that would be of interest as well to me, and I'd like to pursue that. And listening to your other shows, it's really rubbed up my desire to work on another book.
I'm so happy to hear that. And let alone the fact that you could do a paranormal book on anything. I think there's way more than enough mileage to even do a volume 2 to this book.
I think you're right. Now I'm going to investigate Minnesota more.
You got to come up. Check it out. And you heard we do the Minneapolis trolley tours as well. I mean, we love
those look really cool.
They are really cool. They are really cool. There's a lot of good stuff, and I'm excited for you because I hope you can continue following this because you're clearly very interested, and also I love hearing it from a fresh perspective than an old Greg who's done this for so long now that there's a little bit of cynicism in me. I'm not going to lie. It's always nice to see things through fresh eyes as well.
Okay. Well, and if I do a book, I'm going to dedicate it to you, Greg, because you inspired it. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, that means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
What about
very
you?
much.
Are you going to do a book? Have you done a book? I didn't see a book.
No, not a book yet. Maybe someday. We'll see. But I'm much more interested in hearing what folks like you have to offer as well. So I love that. Once again, folks, you can get the book. The book is called Hauntings of the Underground Railroad, Ghosts of the Midwest. This is a fantastic conversation. And please support Jane. Get her book. Go to janeammeson.com. There's so much more to her than just this book. Jane, thank you so much. I really appreciate this tonight.
Thank you for taking the time to have me on your show. I totally enjoyed this.
I did too. Thank you very much. Folks, tomorrow we're talking about ghosts and UFOs. Join us then. Have a great night.